Okay, guys, today we are going to talk about sections 6 through 8 of Night. This will help you prepare for your test next week, as well as give you some information for your essay that will start next Wednesday. I'm going to upload each section separately, so look for 3 different links. All right, so starting with section 8, I went ahead and I highlighted a lot of the important information. So as you go through, you might want to highlight the same thing or take notes. First off, please understand the way that the SS were talking to them. Faster, you tramps, you flea-ridden dogs. Faster, you filthy dogs. Once again, this goes to the element of dehumanization. They're not being treated as men, but being referred to as dogs. Also, I went ahead and I highlighted this down here. They had orders to shoot anyone who could not stand the pace. Anyone who fell out of line would be automatically shot on spot. As we continue on to page 86, please take note of the character. A young boy from Poland was marching beside me. His name was Zelman. On your test, this character, as is referenced, you need to understand that he was marching alongside Ellie and all of a sudden had terrible stomach cramps. Ellie tries to boost his morale. He says, "You cannot stop, you have to keep going." And then all of a sudden, he fell to the ground. Ellie says, "This is the last image I have of him, and he must have died, trampled under the feet of thousands of men who followed us." Please note that Ellie says, "Death enveloped me, it suffocated me, it stuck to me like glue." This is a literary element of personification. It's giving human qualities and characteristics to an inanimate object. Here, Ellie prays for death. He wishes to die. He says that the only thing keeping him going right now is his father's presence. Down here it says, "My father's presence was the only thing that stopped me. He was running next to me out of breath, out of strength, desperate." So he does not feel, "I had no right to let myself die. What would he do without me? I was his sole support." So the only thing that keeps Ellie going, that keeps him alive, that allows him to not surrender to death, is the thought of his father being left alone. All right, not a lot of super important stuff on the next page. Here we are looking at the abandoned building. A few people slipped out of ranks, hoping to hide in the abandoned building. Then they had one more hour of marching. Finally, they reached an abandoned warehouse, abandoned brick factory, and they run in there. They wanted to fall asleep. I want you to understand this right here. "I fell asleep. I don't know how long I slept, a few minutes or 1 hour. When I awoke, a frigid hand was tapping my cheeks. I tried to open my eyes. It was my father. How he had aged since last night." Ellie's father says, "Don't let yourself be overcome by sleep, Eliezer. It's dangerous to fall asleep in snow. One falls asleep forever. Come, my son, come, get up." So Ellie's dad is warning him about falling asleep in the snow. One falls asleep forever, meaning that they have the chance to die if they fall asleep in the snow. Ellie and his father go outside, and it's important on page 89 that they say, "Beneath our feet there lay men, crushed, trampled underfoot, dying. Nobody paid attention to them." I want you to see how this loss of innocence is coming over the prisoners of Auschwitz. We see that nothing at this point is fazing them. They're watching men die around them, and nobody paid any attention. He says, "I saw myself in every stiffened corpse. Soon I wouldn't even be seeing them anymore. I would be one of them, a matter of hours." At this point, Ellie is embracing death. Again, he knows that he cannot continue on this pace for very much longer, and he knows that death will be coming for him. He and his father talk, and they decide to take turns watching one another sleep so nothing happens to them. Important part right here. We're on page 90. Rabbi Eliyahu is on your test. It's really important. He kept his faith the entire time. He says right here, he was the only rabbi whom nobody ever failed to address as rabbi in Buna. He comes in and he is looking for his son. It says down here, he had lost his son in the commotion. He had searched for him among the dying to no avail. Then he had dug through the snow to find his body in vain. So he's looking for his son. He thinks that he is in the pile of dead bodies, but still no son. Really important to understand that when Eli is asked by Rabbi Eliyahu if he has seen his son, he says no, and then later remembers right here, but then I remembered something else. His son had seen him losing ground, sliding back to the rear of the column. He had seen him, and he had continued to run in front, letting the distance between them become greater. So this is important because Rabbi Eliyahu's son saw that his father was losing ground. And remember, what happens if you can't keep up? You get shot. So his son protected himself instead of helping his father. This becomes important because down here, he says, in spite of myself, a prayer formed inside me, a prayer to this God in whom I no longer believed. Eli allows himself to fall back onto religion, and he prays that he has the strength to never do what Rabbi Eliyahu's son has done, and that's the strength to never abandon his father. All right, again, no one recites Kaddish over the dead. Sons abandon the remains of their fathers without a tear. Again, we have this loss of innocence, this complete void of everything except their own survival. As we come to the end of the section, we see that they are moving towards a village. They are moving towards Glywich. And finally, they make it there. And it is here that Eliezer finds Juliak. Once again, remember, Juliak is the violinist. Very important that he is looking for his violin. He wants to protect his violin. He wants to protect his bow. Again, he says, I'm afraid they'll break my violin. I brought it with me. How important possessions are. Remember, they are stripped of everything. They are stripped of their complete identity. For Juliak, his violin is his identity. And as the chapter continues on, Eli says, I heard the sound of a violin in a dark barrack where the dead were piled on top of the living. Here, Juliak is playing Beethoven. He's playing a symphony for the dead and dying. He was playing a fragment of a Beethoven concerto. Remember, this is also important because the prisoners were not allowed to play German music. He says, I shall never forget Juliak. How could I forget this concert given before an audience of the dead and dying? All right, let's see. As the chapter comes to an end, we threw ourselves on it. Someone had the idea of quenching his thirst by eating snow. Soon we were all imitating him, as we were not permitted to bend down. We took out our spoons and ate the snow off his neighbor's back, a mouthful of bread and a spoonful of snow. The SS men who were watching were greatly amused by the spectacle. Here they're being shoved into a cattle car going to their last village. 100 per car. The SS shoved us inside, 100 per car. We were so skinny. When everybody was on board, the convoy